Hi, I'm Peter Reinhardt, and welcome to the Johnson & Wales International Symposium on Bread. I'm coming to you from the Hance Auditorium in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we've held the last 4 bread symposiums, and as you can see, there's nobody here but me. And this is where we usually have it. The seats are all empty because this year, thanks to you, the symposium will be presented online, virtually, in our new presentation hall, which is where I will join you in just a minute. Thank you, and thanks for being part of our new virtual Johnson & Wales International Symposium on Bread, presented by Pizzerias. Welcome again. Throughout the entire symposium, I'll be thanking our generous sponsors over and over again, and ask that you do as well by visiting their booths and pavilions in the exhibitor hall. There you will see lots of bonus content, and you can also make appointments to meet with the folks from these companies that serve our baking community so well. Our presenting sponsor is Pizzerias, who has partnered with us from the very beginning for all of our symposiums, and it is their support that helped us get this one-of-a-kind gathering of thought leaders off the ground. Please also visit our fabulous flour and milling sponsors, Ardent Mills, Lindley Mills, and Central Milling. Thank you also to our equipment sponsors, the WP Bakery Group and Allied Bakery and Food Service Equipment. And thank you also to our specialty food product companies, Probiotine, Fire Within, Big Green Egg, and Mock Mill. Please check out all of their booths to learn about their wonderful and unique products. And also thanks to our media sponsors, Cook's Country, The Local Palate, the James Beard Foundation, and the Bread Bakers Guild of America. You'll be hearing more about all of them throughout the entire series of presentations. So again, thank you to all our sponsors. At the end of today's presentation, you will also see our credit scroll, thanking all of the people behind the scenes who made this event possible, including our production and technical partner, Ganoid Communications, our creative team at Gumbo Marketing, and the many folks at Johnson & Wales University, our hosts for this, our 4th annual gathering. So stick around if you will. But now it's time to get things rolling with today's presentation, so let's go live. And once again, welcome to the Johnson & Wales International Symposium on Bread, presented by Pizzerias. And we are live. We're live, and Nathan, hello, I see you there. Nathan Myhrvold, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank all of you for being part of today's gathering. Why don't you go ahead and unmute your mic, yep. And I'll welcome you, and mention to everybody else who's watching that normally at the beginning I'll talk about what's coming up in the next few days, but I don't want to waste any time. We've got Nathan here, and I want to dive right in with you. So at the end of this hour, I will talk about what's coming up over the next few sessions, and we'll also spin the wheel because we have a prize to give away today. We've got the last of our Zwilling Henkel's 9-inch bread knives. So that you made it to the spinning wheel by visiting the sponsor booths. So we'll come back to that in a little bit. But Nathan, I see you there. You're coming to us from Bellevue. Are you in?
I am in a remote town in Nevada near Death Valley.
Oh, wow.
Believe it or not.
What's happening there?
A meteor shower, wow. Which I want to photograph. And
oh my God.
In Seattle, we don't really see the stars so well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So you're kind of like in the most desolate place. So you got no lights blocking out the sky.
Exactly.
Well, that should be very sort of exciting to be a part of. Is this a particular shower coming in? This is not. We've already passed the Perseids, right? So
yes, the Perseids. This is the Draco Aquariids. But people name these different showers.
Yeah.
But they it's if you've never seen a meteor shower, and you have an opportunity to, you should try. It's super cool. It's part of the natural world. But let's talk about pizza.
Yeah, we will. We definitely want to talk about pizza because I know you got a big announcement to make today. We had Stephanie on early in the symposium, and she told us the Modernist Pizza was coming. And now, I assume because you're here, it is here.
It is here. And I think in the presentation, it says it's available tomorrow, but it's actually available today.
Can't wait.
Under some definition of today. I mean, if you order it, it will be shipped off to you right away.
Right. What will it look like when it comes? If somebody orders the set, I know.
Well, you'll
I've got
see.
the bread and I've got cuisine, but this one is pizza. Is it as big and bold?
Well, let's dive into the presentation. We got some pictures.
Okay, go ahead and take us through it.
Okay. So Caitlin, there. So this is our team that works on Modernist Pizza in the kitchen. We do lots and lots of testing and recipe development there. Next.
I recognize some of those folks from when I was out visiting you.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much the same team.
But this is a different place. This is a whole new facility from when I was out there.
Yeah, we wound up moving to a new lab, and this is the new lab, which is got everything you'd want for a great commercial kitchen or bakery, and what you'd want for a great science lab. So it's kind of fun.
In the words of Dustin Hoffman, it's very sparkly.
So, of course, we have made the Modernist Cuisine family of books. There's over 325,000 copies in print in 8 languages. And there at the end, you can see Modernist Pizza. So this is a modest little 4-volume book. It's not a ginormous 6-volume book. But it's focused on a single topic, which is the first time we've ever picked a topic that is arguably a single dish.
So in other words, this one won't throw my back out when I lift up the whole box, right?
Be careful. I mean, it's still 30 pounds.
30 pounds, yeah. Well, I remember when I got my first one, Modernist Cuisine, it was about 50 pounds, and it was a haul getting it into my office. But and then the same with the Modernist breads. So now when you say 4 volumes, we see 3, but then next to it there's one with a spiral, right?
So we make really big, pretty books, and that allows us to show you lots of information and have beautiful photos. But when you actually go back in the kitchen, they can be too large and you might not want to get them messy. So we have a kitchen manual that repeats all of the recipes, and that is spiral bound, so it's easy to open up in the kitchen.
And isn't the pages are pretty much like stain resistant, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, why don't we click?
Okay.
I think this is our trailer.
Oh, nice. The cheese pull. Is there sound, or are we just getting?
There's supposed to be sound.
I don't think the sound's coming through to my end.
Well, it's not coming through to me either.
Okay, the
but
visuals
enjoy the
So these are all
the montage of
places.
pictures, and I'll be talking about everything that's in here.
Okay.
So it's, in photographing the bread book, we had this problem that bread is pretty much all the same color. Pizza gave us a lot more variety.
Yeah, it can be very colorful.
So we have 1,016 recipes in the book. But, I like to say that if there's a normal recipe book, here's some stats, but we'll go over those in a moment too. A normal recipe book, you have a set of recipes, and they will, if you follow those recipes and do this, you'll get the result. And if that's really all you care about, I don't have much of a proposition for you. But if you want to know why things work, if you want to gain some understanding of it,
Yeah.
that's where I think we come in. So for this book, we traveled more than 100,000 miles, going to almost 300 pizzerias around the world. It's 1,708 pages, 35 pounds, 3,700 photographs. We previously had a stainless steel case. This is still stainless steel, but we thought a sort of a Ferrari red case would be a little bit more keeping with the Italian origins of pizza and be a little bit different.
Definitely. And I'll be able to tell it apart from my other sets.
Exactly. Okay. And this is coming out in English today, but it will be in Italian, French, German, Spanish. We're particularly nervous about Italian, of course, because an American coming and telling Italians how to make pizza kind of sounds backwards, but we thought we'd go ahead and do it.
And they're so territorial about pizza, aren't they?
Well, yeah, we'll talk a bunch about that. Actually, everybody's territorial about pizza.
Oh, that's true.
That's one of the reasons pizza has been so successful. So this is the cover photos of the different volumes.
Sweet.
So history and fundamentals. We have techniques and ingredients, then recipes. Okay.
I love that pizza on the recipe book.
Yes, that is that's a pizza by a pizzola named Franco Pepe in Italy, and he calls it the wrong mozzarella or wrong margarita. It's got white sauce with red on top rather than the other way around, but it's pretty incredible.
When you're Franco Pepe, you can break all the rules.
Exactly. Here's the whole table of contents, which I don't expect anyone to read here, but click. So we always start our books with a history section because the history of food is usually very poorly known. Most people have an idea of history, but it includes lots of things that are not true. Pizza is particularly difficult because pizzerias throughout history have used the claim of authenticity and the claim of antiquity as an example of why they're great. So basically, a lot of the stories are just made up. They're not even remotely true. So we got so obsessed with it, we decided it was like one of those TV shows where you come in and they have the crazy conspiracy theory. That's what this shot is. Next. So we have pizza in the United States because we got Italians from Naples. In the late 19th century, early 20th century, there was a great exodus of people from Italy, and particularly from Naples and southern Italy. Pizza did originate in Naples, but it was a very local cuisine. It wouldn't even be fair to say that it was in Campania, the region of Naples. It really was in the city of Naples, something that you only get in the city, and really only in the poorer parts of the city. And it's actually, I should say it was an undocumented cuisine. Most Italian sources didn't start talking about pizza as we know it today until the 1930s. It was considered a food for poor people that wasn't worth writing down, which is insane if you think of it from today, but that was a perspective. Okay, next. The story of the Neapolitan margarita pizza is an example of one of these things is largely made up. Click. This is Queen Margherita. Well, it turned out that there's a famous story that Margherita was the first margarita was made for her in 1880. But in fact, she'd been eating pizza before then, first of all. Second of all, I found a play that was in the Neapolitan dialect of Italian, and the play was from the 1860s. And in the play, there's a pizzolo, and someone comes up to the pizzolo and he orders a pizza with tomato, mozzarella, and basil.
Sounds
So
familiar.
that's, more than 20 years before it was supposedly invented.
But it became such a legendary origin story. It kind of got traction. Is that because of the marketing, the clever marketing of Pizzeria Brandi, who kind of took ownership of?
Well, then they took it as a very clever marketing thing. Exactly. Okay, click. And the other thing is that the pizza that people ate in Naples in the 19th century was not like the pizza that we eat today, even in Naples. And largely that's because the flour was different. In order to make what you'd call a characteristic Neapolitan pizza today, you need a better flour than existed anywhere in the 19th century. And in fact, it was only after World War II that they started getting decent flour. And it's known in Italian as farine de Manitoba because they got a lot of Canadian flour. And so generically, the term, regardless of where it's from now, farine de Manitoba was the thing that caused it to change. I found a film shot in Naples in the 1930s that shows people eating a pizza, and it doesn't have a nice puffy rim. It's flat, it's hard to cut, it's stiff. It's nothing like the so-called authentic Neapolitan pizza.
Yeah, or what we think of now as the authentic. It's amazing how these foods evolve, and
yep.
And
well, and the trouble, I understand why authenticity is appealing to people, but in fact, what made pizza successful was lots of creativity in parts of lots of folks' part. And to dismiss all that creativity and act like, oh, there was this one time it was created and it was perfect, and we never messed with it. It's just not human nature. It's not plausible. Okay, next. So here's a whole bunch of different facts and figures. The first franchised fast food in the United States was pizza. Not hamburgers, not fried chicken, pizza. It was Shakey's in 1953. As it happens, the first pizza I ever ate was from Shakey's in Los Angeles. Another thing most people don't realize is that besides coming to the United States, Italians went to South America. So about half of Argentinians would claim Italian origin. And there's a ton of people in Brazil also with Italian origin. And so we went to both Buenos Aires and Sao Paulo because they each have their own distinctive pizza cultures.
I've heard that, and I've not been to South America, but I've heard that both in Brazil and Argentina that there's phenomenal pizza down there, and people are very serious about that.
Well, they are. It's strange. In Buenos Aires, they seem to have set out to try to answer the rhetorical question, is it possible to have too much cheese on pizza? Because, oh my God, do they put a lot of cheese on their pizza?
I would probably love that pizza because I love cheesy pizza.
But the sort of the center of gravity of pizza there is slice places where you eat standing up on a metal plate, but you don't touch the pizza, use a knife and fork.
Interesting. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Sao Paulo, pizza is a white tablecloth restaurant thing. We went to the only pizzeria in Sao Paulo that serves at lunch. There's only one. Wow. City of 10 million people. And it's sort of become a tradition in Sao Paulo like the Brits will have a Sunday roast at home. There's a tradition of families going out for pizza on Sunday night. So Sunday night is actually the biggest night for pizzerias.
Interesting, and such a flip from the way we perceive it here in the States, where it's a slice. You take a slice for lunch,
So here's some historical recipes. I find it very funny that we found recipes for pizza in French and English long before Italian. And the first Italian book that had pizza was 1929. It seems crazy, but it's the case. Next.
And I want to just ask you a question about, you mentioned Shakey's earlier. I made the first, what would you call the first like multi-location pizza chain in America in the 50s?
Not just pizza chain, the first franchised food chain of any kind.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's interesting because, of course, it seems like Shakey's was one of the big players for a long time, and then they seem to have disappeared off the map. But the thing that I remember Shakey's for, and one of our viewers even wrote in how much she loved Shakey's as a kid, is that it was a style. It was pizza parlor. It was Shakey's Pizza Parlor.
Yes.
And that style of parlor pizza is now kind of coming back with a vengeance, and it's sometimes called bar pizza, sometimes called parlor pizza, and it's a full circle with this.
They also had a visible kitchen. They had a long window, at least the one I went to as a kid. And you could watch them make the pizzas. And so it was a window into the kitchen.
Yeah.
And so I was fascinated, and they would put funny, perhaps today we would say slightly inappropriate labels on things like Isaboxa, Mora Isaboxa, sort of a, Italian, mimicking an Italian accent.
A crude Italian thing, yeah.
But it was awesome to me to be able to watch the pizza being made. Now, historically, the word pizza comes from the same root word as pita for pita bread. And you can see all around the eastern part of the Mediterranean, they all have a very similar name for flatbread. And this has caused a lot of confusion because does that mean pita bread is a pizza? And we decided for our book, the answer is no. That what we would trace is the history of the phenomenon we now know as pizza. And it's a little bit like genealogy. I could say, gee, Peter Reinhardt is a German name. A lot of people came from Germany to the United States. And while that's true, there actually is a specific set of Reinhardts that led to you, Peter.
That's right.
And so what we did is we tried to say, what are the roots of the pizza phenomenon? And it clearly, the root started in Naples, but if it had just stayed in Naples, I think it would be a minor phenomenon. What really made pizza big time is it came to the United States and it mutated. Click.
But before it came to the United States, all those other regions where you had pita and all these other things, they were predating the 1880, 1860s pizza in Naples, right? I mean, they had their own version.
Yes, well, in fact, in Italy, in other regions of Italy, they would use the term pizza generically the way we'd use the term tart. So the first Italian cookbook is from 1532, the L'Opera di Bartolomeo Scapi. And Scapi has a lot of pizza recipes, but his idea of pizza is a dessert tart.
Interesting.
Now, it's one of these things where it's a different use of the same word. It isn't, no, those things really were pizzas.
Yeah.
They had nothing to do with it.
I know that the Greeks, who like to claim ownership of everything, that started with them, they have a whole bunch of dishes like spanakopita, words that end with pita, that are, in a sense, almost you could say forerunners of what later became sort of the Italian version.
Well, they're forerunners and they're not. I mean, so my favorite example is in the Alsace part of Germany and France. There's a dish called Flammkuchen.
Hmm.
And a Flammkuchen, if we looked at it today, you'd say for all intents and purposes, it is a pizza.
Right.
But it doesn't count, and we have a recipe for it in the book because we call it a pizza-like thing.
Right.
It had nothing to do with the rise of pizza. It was a separate issue. Even in Alsace, we couldn't say, hey, Peter, let's go out tonight for some beers and Flammkuchen to the Flammkuchen place. I mean, they make Flammkuchen, you could probably find it, but it's not it doesn't have the same significance as pizza does, where pizza is strong.
Interesting. Didn't the French steal the Flammkuchen and call it tarte flambée?
Yeah, well, that's Alsace. You don't want to get into who stole what from whom in the Alsace.
Yeah.
They fought world wars over that.
Yeah, you're standing on
but yes, tarte flambée or Flammkuchen, which was supposedly, the story is, it was something that the bakers would make for themselves while waiting for their ovens to heat up to actually make bread. Okay, next. So travel, with some kinds of food, you can learn all about the food by reading cookbooks. Like for high-end food, Michelin 3-star restaurants, every chef has got a cookbook. It's part of their professional development. It's a marketing thing. It's an ego thing. So you can learn a lot about what people are doing around the world by reading their books. Not true for pizza. So we decided we would have to go all over the world to famous pizza cities and famous pizzerias and say, hey, what are they doing and what's up? Next.
Were they relatively open with you when you came to visit? I mean, were they willing to share?
So that was the interesting thing. Almost everyone was incredibly open.
Oh.
And they would tell us their recipes. They would show us everything. A few weren't, but there was an interesting correlation. The worse the pizza, the more likely they were not going to tell us.
That's interesting.
And so a couple of times we would leave a place where people didn't want to tell us anything. We said, look, that's fine. It's up to you. But after we left the place, I'd say to our people, I'd say, man, I don't want to learn how to make that.
There you go. Yeah.
So this is sort of an overview of the various places we went around the world. Next. Here's sort of a montage of some of the great pizzolos of the world that we visited. Yeah, it's really hard.
Can you go back just one slide? Yeah,
Sure,
right
one
there. Now that's Portland, right? That's
well, on one side it's Portland.
yeah, the left side.
So Lovely's 50/50. That's Sarah Mitnick there.
Who you guys recently got a lot of press for declaring her pizzeria to be maybe the best in America. The current.
It's
best.
right up there with the best in America. Absolutely. The other woman is the only female pizzolo in Italy who at their highest level. Their Gambero Rosso does a thing where they judge pizzerias. Wow. Rather than doing stars like Michelin, they do spicchi, which is slices of pizza. Yeah, so she is a tre spicchi.
A 3 slicer.
And it's funny that the Italian pizza culture is overwhelmingly male.
Yeah.
And the main reason that she says she was successful is that she was born in Italy to Polish immigrants. Yeah. So she didn't know the rule that she was not supposed to be a pizzolo.
So she kind of transgressed, but then it's too late. They couldn't kick her out because she was too good.
Yep. Next.
Well, it's interesting how here in the States, so many women now are in the game. So do you think that's going to change over there too? Is it opening up for women?
Oh, it's opening up. It's Europe in general clings stronger to traditions. Yeah. But they're making progress. I mean,
Oh, here we go.
Anyway, here's a montage of things. We had a lot of press for saying that the best pizza in the city in the United States, that's not even close, is Portland.
Yeah, and anybody who's been to Portland, I think would tend to agree with you. Unless of course they're from New York and they just are too entrenched and they can't let go of not being.
Well, it's, for a lot of people, the local pizza is as important to them, at least, as the local sports team. And this is like I'm saying their team isn't any good.
Mm,
But the fact is, Portland, I don't know, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, had two artisanal pizzerias that were very good.
yeah,
A Pizza Shoals and Ken's Artisan.
right.
And then it went through this foodie renaissance of lots of people in Portland wanting to open their own restaurants, including pizzerias.
Yeah,
And with these two really good role models, which many of the great pizzolos in Portland worked at least one or both of those two places, and others saw it as a standard. They have a great pizza culture.
it's amazing how fast it developed, and which tells us that could happen in a lot of other places if they have the right conditions.
Oh, absolutely. Now, one of the things that's unique about pizza is that as it traveled around the world, and even as it stayed in its own hometowns, it mutated. People made their own variations on pizza, and those variations got to be popular. And so you can't talk about pizza. We felt we had to talk about pizza in the broadest sense. This is not about just Neapolitan pizza, although that's where it started. It's about all kinds. And so we scoured the earth. I don't claim we have every kind of pizza, but we have every major kind of pizza covered. Next. We don't think that a particular set of toppings means that's a style.
Yeah.
For us, a style has got to have more than one kind of topping.
Yeah.
And of course, part and parcel with the fact that the history of pizza is mostly made up, Hawaiian style pizza is from Toronto.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's amazing what a landmine that one is, the Hawaiian pizza conversation.
There's another thing is that there are various groups, specifically, or sort of most famously, the people in Naples who claim that they have their whole style guide and they have all these complicated rules. But in reality, those complicated rules are not actually how pizza world works.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to see the rules, but to me, it's more interesting to see the exceptions to the rules.
Yeah, right. And the ones that tend to break from the pack are the ones that broke the rules too. They're not the ones.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Now, when you start talking about pizza and you're critical of a type of pizza, the first thing that happens is somebody says, "But that's what I grew up on."
Yeah.
And while this is difficult for me because I didn't want to be judging other people's pizza and saying, "Oh, that kind of pizza you grew up on is terrible," and so forth. But in the middle of wrestling with this, I found this essay by Peter Rugg, and it's a brilliant essay, but you learn a lot just from the title.
Yeah. It's a great title. Great title.
Unfortunately, we decided that we had to call it the way we saw it, in terms of there are many places in the world that have locked in bad practice, and that bad practice they think is what defines their pizza. And I kind of disagree. So next. So here's what we call the unforgivable list.
Okay.
If your crust comes out uncooked and gooey, this is a problem.
Yep.
Okay. If there's a big thick gum line, you can see one here on this pizza. The gum line is where the dough and the sauce or cheese meet. That's a problem. Super dry dough, burned pizzas. Now there's people say, "Oh, I love the char." Well, that's fine. And I don't want to tell anyone what you should want. If you want that, that's fine. But I'm going to call it out as a flaw. Not using salt. This is a weird one where there are a bunch of places in the US, primarily, where they put almost no salt in their pizza dough. And you know what bread is like if you don't put salt in. It tastes terrible. It's like cardboard.
Flat, yeah.
One practice we saw that was truly reprehensible in my thing, and I'm ashamed to say we saw it first in pizzerias in Seattle, my hometown, is whereas the pizzolo puts the peel with the uncooked pizza into the oven, as he pulls out the peel, he lifts up the pizza and goes and blows under the pizza, which is in effect spitting all over the pizza.
What's the purpose of that?
I could not believe that they were doing this. And they said, oh, well, the air comes through and it makes it easier to lift the pizza afterwards. It's like, and then I think you saw how shocked I looked.
Oh my God.
And they said, well, the heat kills anything.
Yeah. Right.
Don't spit on your pizza.
Right.
Okay? I don't know why I have to tell people this, but it's just true.
It's so funny how like if somebody did it and the restaurant became popular, then it becomes a law. Then this is how you have to blow under your pizza.
Well, and because it had apparently, I don't know if it originated at one place in Seattle, but it had trained a bunch of people that were now in other places. This is what had happened. There's a town in Pennsylvania called Old Forge, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And they have lots of marketing chutzpah because they declared themselves the pizza capital of the world.
Right.
It's a town of 7,000 people that has 7 pizzerias, each making a pretty much identical pizza.
Yeah.
Which has a sort of a white bread dough crust that they par-bake, some tomato, and my God, they put American cheese or Velveeta on it. Now, these people are all very sincere. They're wonderful people. They're very nice. They're descended from Italians.
Yeah.
How do they put Velveeta on their pizza? Now, so I think their pizza it's not the pizza capital of the world, but if you wanted to make pizza for a middle school cafeteria, maybe it would be okay.
That's whatever, when you're describing it, it reminds me of when I was in elementary school, once a month they would serve what they called American pizza for lunch. And it was basically a half of a French bread roll with some kind of sauce or ketchup on it and a couple slices of American cheese. And then they would put it under the broiler and call it American pizza. Yep. That's what it sounds like.
Okay, next.
But I have to give it to the Old Forge folks. Their marketing department is killer.
Well, I mean, the place that has the world's worst pizza relative to its reputation is New Haven.
Oh, okay. Well,
oh my God, have they done a good job on marketing? There's almost no salt in the crust. It's very low hydration. Peter, that in making bread, hydration is one of our key parameters.
Yeah.
Typical pizza crust in New Haven is about 48%.
Wow. No, I didn't know that.
Now, 48% is, you'd almost never make a 48% bread unless you're making hardtack or something. But that's kind of what they're making. And then, of course, they burn it.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that's funny is that New Haven is also known for their clam pizza, which is a brilliant idea. And if you can get past the burned cardboard crust, the clam pizza is fantastic. But
yeah. Well,
okay, so
that char/burn that you're describing, it becomes synonymous with that style, and then somehow it's been embraced. Your mind can kind of almost what's the word, transmute, the common sense sometimes.
Well, and look, the people in New Haven seem to love it. So who am I to tell them what they prefer? If they prefer that, that's great.
Yeah.
But as a chef, as a culinary person, I gotta say, more water makes a much tastier crust. Salt makes a tastier crust.
I didn't know that about the
putting it
salt.
black.
Yeah, I did. I didn't realize that they didn't put salt in their dough, or very little.
Yeah, so most of the pizzerias in New Haven were very, very protective of their recipe, but a couple of them told us the recipe, and it was on the order of 2 tablespoons of salt per 50-pound sack of flour.
Wow. Yeah.
They might as well have bother.
They might as well have like wiped their forehead and thrown it in.
Yeah. So anyway, when I was a kid, I worked on cars a lot, and in the Chilton's manual for repairing cars, they would always have these things called exploded diagrams.
Yeah.
And that would show you how a part of the car would come together and the screws came. So we used that in modernist cuisine to show how sandwiches came together. And it's also how we describe how to make pizzas, because it allows you to see the magic view of here's all the different things you've added. And then down at the very bottom is the finished pizza.
Your book, all the books are, this is like the signature style of the books, these defying gravity photos.
So you can see we've done this for lots of different pizzas.
Can you take us and show us how the sausage is made? How do you do that? Can you give us a hint on how you make time stop like that?
Well, in that case, it involves very, very, very fine thread or fishing line and a sewing needle, and you're hanging each of those little meatballs like they're Christmas ornaments.
Really? Amazing.
Well, that's one of the ways. We've developed several ways to do it, but that's the typical way. Meanwhile, for the sauce, you have to put that on a piece of very thin plexiglass, but you have to warp the plexiglass first so it doesn't look dead straight. And then you make sure something's dripping off the edge.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Are these some of these photos are so dramatic? Are they kind of the ones that show up in your galleries and blown up in posters? Uh-huh. Look at these. So Italia, by going back to that one, so that's and doesn't that indicate that it's been baked in a pan? Italia, and is that synonymous with a Roman style?
Well, so I'm laughing because there are, depending on how you look at it, 3 or 4 different pizzas that all claim to be Roman style.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And those pizzas all date, the earliest is from the 1990s.
Yeah, right.
So there was zero tradition of pizza in Rome. They had some flatbread, some focaccias that they would refer to as pizza, but they truly were a focaccia. They were sold cold, meant to be eaten cold.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, Al Taglio is that style. Now, the style that has been championed by Gabriele Bonci and a variety of others. It pushes the edge of what pizza is a definition to me, because most other pizzas you bake with toppings on, and this is basically an open face sandwich that you make where there's a little bit of tomato or oil brushed on the top. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Yeah, so in other words, they put stuff on after it comes out of the oven. They finish it off.
Detroit is an interesting example where we have a general rule that all old famous pizzerias are lousy. Now, I don't know for a fact if that's true for literally everyone, but that's our rule of thumb. Yeah. And what you really want in a pizzeria is a living person who comes in every day trying to make their pizza great. Not coming in every day saying, I want to change nothing from the way grandpa did it.
Yeah.
So Detroit is funny because the worst place in the world to have Detroit pizza is Detroit. If you have Detroit pizza in Chicago, or Detroit pizza in Los Angeles, it's fantastic compared to this because it's made by people making it as a specialty. As opposed to, this is the stuff we've been turning out since the 1940s. And
it goes back to that article you showed us earlier about the pizza you grew up with.
Next. This is maybe the one of the newest types of pizza. There's a movement, very self-consciously movement in northern Italy, centered in Verona, of all places, where they make something they call pizza gourmet or pizza degustazione. And boy, is it different. But we wanted to make sure that we told people everything that was going on in the world of pizza and explained how to make it or a reasonable facsimile thereof. Next. Of course, dough is super important to pizza. Next. But there's all of this lore and legend about you must have this in a dough for New York. You must not have this in a dough. So one of the things that we try to do is to think outside the box a little bit. And so I said, well, why don't we try cross-crusting? So that means you make a pizza of one type, but you deliberately use the wrong dough. And of course, when you say that to a traditional pizzolo, they're like, you can't do that.
Right.
And then I say, well, what's it going to do? Is it going to jump out of the oven? Is it going to catch fire? I mean, of course I can do it.
Right.
It may or may not work. And the interesting thing is how well many of the combinations work. So here we're just listing a bunch of them. Deep dish pizza is basically a pie or a casserole. Deep dish pizza really doesn't care what crust you put on it.
Right.
Because whatever crust you put on it, you're rolling it really thin, and then you're putting a ton of stuff on top. At Pizzeria Uno, a large pizza has 8 pounds of ingredients.
Wow.
And they cut it in 8 slices, so it's 1 pound per slice. Now, sitting under all those ingredients, it doesn't matter. You can use a Neapolitan dough, you can use a New York dough, it doesn't matter. And some of these actually work, I would argue, even better than their intended dough.
Interesting. Yeah.
Next.
You just have the courage to mix it and not care about getting yelled at.
But I think this is also important because small pizzerias will often want to offer more than one kind. Can you get away with using the same dough? Now, there's also problems that can come in that. In New York, if you get a what's called a square or sometimes it's called grandma, sometimes it's called Sicilian, those are usually not very successful because they usually use the identical dough as they would for a thin New York pizza. And here's the problem, they use the identical oven.
Yeah.
And so they have to take the pizza out before it burns. And as a result, almost every New York square Sicilian grandma is uncooked. Interesting.
Yeah. That's how I recall my experience at the Spumoni Gardens, L&B Spumoni Gardens.
Yes, exactly.
That it was pretty uncooked.
and so we think that's pretty bad.
Well, there you go. You got Tony Gemignani's flour in the middle there. He's a guy that just takes the opposite approach. He's got a different dough for every pizza on his menu.
Yeah, I don't know if Tony is going to kiss me or kill me after discovering that. I may not need that.
Let's find out.
But there's a lot of mysticism about the flours, And the fact is that flour does matter, but you can make a pizza out of almost any decent bread flour. And some types of the pizza, the super thin pizzas, it doesn't even have to be bread flour, pastry flour works. Another thing I love about the flour story is the most famous flour in the pizza world is the 00 flour from Caputo, a mill in Naples, which was started by guys from New Jersey.
Is that right?
Yes.
I know that there's guys in New Jersey who was marketed here in the States, but I didn't know that they were the
originally back in the early 1900s. Two American-born Italian immigrants went back to Naples, bought a mill, married women in Naples, and started the Caputo factory. So it's not well known that it's really an Italian-American thing, not just Italian. So then there's cheese. I wanted to have a cheese pull shot from the inside, so that's what this is.
Those cheese pull shots have become sort of Instagram darlings.
Well, it tells how much we like the cheese,
I love it.
Right?
I mean, I see a shot like this one, and I just want to go get some pizza. I mean, it's just it causes salivation.
Okay, next. So we did tons of experiments on this. One of the things that I found very interesting was that in Italy, mozzarella di bufala is usually, or fior di latte, which is mozzarella made from cow's milk, but in this traditional wet form. It doesn't have the same flavor or texture as the mozzarella di bufala we get in the United States. So I pondered that, and then we did a bunch of experiments, and it's because we get old mozzarella here. So for example, mozzarella di bufala often has a little bit of a tang to it, a little bit, just not in Italy. Nope.
Because it's so fresh.
At least not if you're using it fresh in Italy.
Yeah.
That tang develops after about 10 days. But the fresh mozzarella di bufala we get, also the texture changes quite a bit. Okay, next. There's a lot of pizzerias that say we make our own mozzarella, and then when you press them, what they mean is they buy mozzarella curd, and then they heat it and stretch it and wrap it and ball it. And so I was thinking, okay, you go to all this effort to stretch and ball your mozzarella, then you grate it or cut it up and sprinkle it over pizza. Do you really need to do that? Click. No.
I was going to ask, I really always wanted to know that. Would it work just as good with the curds as with the ball?
You can do it just with the curds. The curds don't melt the same way, exactly the same way. So I like it made with curds, but if you heat the curds and you just stretch it a couple times, that's all you have to do. No hand balling and so forth.
That's the theater.
Now, mozzarella di bufala is, of course, buffalo milk mozzarella. The first thing that surprised me when I first learned this as a child is, where the hell are the buffalo from?
Yeah,
there's no buffalo in Italy. Right. It turns out they are Asian water buffaloes. And there's two main things that are different about their milk. The first is it's twice the fat of cow's milk. And why does it taste so good? It's twice the fat of cow's milk.
Right. Ask the answer. Yeah.
The other thing that is interesting is you may have noticed that goat's milk is super white. Cow's milk is not.
Yeah.
Well, buffalo milk is white like goat's milk. And we tracked down the reason. It turns out that the forage that cows eat have natural coloring chemicals in them called carotene. Very much the way carrots have carotene and the way tomatoes have carotene. Well, the carotene in most grass is yellowish. That's why when the grass dies, it's golden yellow. Cows do not digest carotenes. So that carotene that the cows eat in their forage goes into their milk. And the yellowishness you get in milk or in butter, that yellow is actually from the grass. Buffaloes and goats digest the keratin, break it up, and so they have dead white milk. Anyway, we thought, well, okay, if you can't get buffalo milk, can you make cow's milk with extra fat? Answer, yes, you can, and it's delicious. Next. Then we got into saying, well, gee, could you infuse herbs or other things into the, no, absolutely you can. Next. So here's there was paprika. Here's the yellow. There is mozzarella, but it's saffron infused mozzarella.
Beautiful. They look like egg yolks. They're gorgeous.
Yes, and so we figured if you view pizza like a pizzolo, you have a very specific set of ingredients, and that's tradition. If you view it more like a chef, you say, well, why can't I mess with that? Here's an olive oil infused fior di latte. Next. We also made what we call modernist cheeses. This occurs because I was in a cheese store and they were selling cheddar cheese curd. So I think, okay, what if I added some cheddar cheese curd or just some cheddar cheese to mozzarella curd and made a cheese out of it? Or what if I did it with blue cheese? And the answer is, yep, it works. And if you want specific flavors, it's one of the ways to get it. Next. Then, of course, tomato sauce is a big thing on pizza.
Yeah.
Like, we go through the whole history of the tomato. Amusingly, Italy was one of the last parts of Europe to accept tomatoes. And Tuscany was the last part of the last part. They didn't trust tomatoes at all. Here's sort of the history. Next. These are San Marzano tomatoes. And if you see that purplish lump in the background, that is Mount Vesuvius. San Marzano tomatoes have to be harvested within a certain distance of Vesuvius. And if you listen to the VPN, the organization in Naples that sets the supposed rules, they say you must use San Marzano tomatoes. Well, they can be very good, but there's plenty of other really good tomatoes in the world.
So San Marzano is a place and a tomato that's been associated with that tomato, but it's really kind of a generic Italian plum tomato, essentially, right?
Well, no, there's a specific cultivar. So the difference is that you can't see it in this picture, but a plum tomato generically has a round bottom. And these have got a little point at the end of the bottom.
I see.
Now, what matters most to me is excellent taste.
Yeah.
And there are very good San Marzano tomatoes, but there's also San Marzano tomatoes.
Yeah.
So another great debate I had with Italian pizzolos is they would say, oh, I only use fresh tomatoes, or I use uncooked tomatoes. And I'd say, I just saw you open a can.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's not cooked.
Wow.
And I said, actually, it's cooked.
Right. So,
Okay,
when they say we use uncooked tomatoes, that doesn't mean they're just taking them fresh from the field and putting them on top of the pizza.
So then we decided, hey, why don't we try to give people some inspiration for creating their own pizzas. And two great inspirations for this come from either sauces like pasta sauces or soups. And the reason this is interesting is there are a lot more soups and pasta sauces just in Italy, if not the rest of the world, than there are pizzas or recognized pizza types. So why can't you go and adapt them? And so not only can you, and we have a whole bunch of them, but we also give a general rule of thumb for how you would start with a soup that you love or start with a sauce that you love and how you would develop a pizza around it.
Yeah. I can imagine the tasting sessions there must have been phenomenal.
Yes, and I still bear the weight.
Yeah. How could you not? I mean, holy cow, these pizzas, you just want to dive in.
Well, here's an example. We have a Detroit style pizza with roasted chicken jus. So this is, you make a thick, concentrated chicken stock, and you put that on the pizza. Now, you put too much on and it would be soupy, but if you get the set right,
Yeah.
it gives you a roast chicken flavor, which is not something I've ever had in a pizza before.
Can you go back to that notion of modernist cheese? You say you can take cheeses that don't generally melt, melt creamy like, and make them.
Yeah.
Do that.
So
How
in
do
this
you-
case, we took a Wisconsin brick cheese, and the recipe is sort of a mixture of what you would do with a brick cheese or what you do with mozzarella. It will have a little bit of a what's called an emulsifying salt, which prevents it from separating. The cheese is an emulsion, and just like mayonnaise is an emulsion. When you melt cheese, you often break the emulsion. And when that emulsion breaks, that's why you get a separation on your pizza, and you'll get pools of pure grease.
Yeah.
And then you'll get a very stringy, hard cheese remnant. Well, by adding these things to the sauce, the cheese or to the cheese sauce, you can prevent that. Sort of in the same way that in a macaroni and cheese, you want to prevent the sauce from splitting, or in a fondue, you want to prevent it from splitting.
Interesting. Yeah. So again, all these tricks for how to do that are all contained in the book.
Yep. Then of course we talk about toppings endlessly. The world has put a lot of stuff on pizzas. In Buenos Aires, a popular pizza has slices of pineapple right out of the can, and then you can debate pineapple on pizza, but the part that gets me is then in the center of every pineapple slice they put a large green olive that still has its stone in it.
Oh, interesting.
And then as the pizza's brought out to your table, they don't stay put and they're rolling all over the place, but the Argentines love them.
So there you go. It's
okay, click. Now, pepperoni is interesting because it's entirely an American invention. There is no sausage like it or even remotely like it in Italy. In fact, one of the great pizzolos of Italy asked us and said, "Hey, I've never had pepperoni. What's it like?" So we managed to ship him a carton of American pepperoni, and he proceeded to make pizza with it.
What did he think of it?
Oh, he liked it.
Good. Because you always think that they would tend to turn their nose up at something that was developed.
Well, this was a very broad thinking pizza.
Yeah, right.
Most of them would never even consider buying stuff from America.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, one thing that is all the rage these days in the United States is cupping pepperoni.
Yeah.
So this is pepperoni that will curl up.
Yeah.
Well, it turned out we did lots of experiments. We explained how cupping works and why it occurs. But click. But then we found this ad from Hormel in 1988,
Wow.
where it's showing how brand A, B, and C cup, but by God, their Hormel doesn't cup.
Wow.
Which is very funny because today you pay a premium to have pepperoni that cups.
And Hormel is what proudly selling cupping pepperoni right now. I know.
Absolutely.
They've had to walk that one back.
So then, we list both traditional combinations of toppings, but then lots of non-traditional ones that we came up with or were inspired by our travels. So here's a few of them.
Wow, they're beautiful, gorgeous.
I hope everybody watching this has access to food afterwards because you're going to be hungry.
I know.
Now, the biggest difference between professional bakers and home bakers is the oven. And the same thing is true in a pizza. But it's a very different set of issues than the ovens that you'd use for bread. So we sort of fancifully call this the Pizzolo equation. You've got all these different things that you have to accomplish. And the thing that's really different about this from most normal cooking is that you are cooking with light. Almost all pizza baking is about radiant energy. So it's very much like a broiler. Click. Now, there's lots of different ovens that people use. Of course, the traditional oven is wood-fired, and people will act like a wood-fired oven is absolutely the best way to make pizza. And I will say that if you have an expert pizzolo, it's great. An expert with a wood-fired oven can do a very good job. The problem with a wood-fired oven is that the heat source is changing minute by minute as the wood burns. And it takes a lot of skill and energy on the part of the pizzolo to make this very unreliable heat source work. So, I like to use two different devices as a example, a violin and a unicycle. A violin is really hard to learn. I can't do it at all. But an expert violinist, by just subtle motions of the hands and the bow, they make this incredible sound. So it's hard to learn, but you make a better result. Now, if you want to walk, of course, you can walk somewhere or run somewhere. But if you've got reasonably flat ground, a bicycle, allows you to go much further, much faster. But not a unicycle. A unicycle is something that is really, really hard to learn. And it doesn't actually do any better than a bicycle. In fact, it's arguably worse. So my analogy is wood-fired ovens are, for most people, they're like a unicycle. Now, if you go see a Cirque du Soleil show, they will have somebody in a unicycle do stuff you cannot believe. And the same thing is true with an expert with a wood-fired oven. In the United States, wood-fired was very uncommon 30 years ago. And wood-fired sort of became a hallmark of quality. Like, if you have a wood-fired oven, you must be really serious. But can you make a pizza just as good with a gas or electric oven? I would say yes, and more reliably. Next. We have lots of things like how to make pizza for a crowd. If you have a pizza oven at home and you invite a lot of people over, you quickly learned that you have to make pizza one at a time in your pizza oven, or maybe two at a time. So what are some strategies? So it's an example of how you can plan ahead. Next. I always like to talk about serving and storage, both how do you serve a pizza, and if you're not eating it right away, what's the best thing to do with it? Oh my God, are there a lot of clever pizza cutting tools in the world?
Yeah.
A huge amount of human innovation has gone into that. Next. Deep dish pizza is particularly awkward. So we actually have a funny recommendation here. Click. Take that electric knife that you used for sawing your mother's turkey, nice, dry, hard Thanksgiving turkey. It works wonderfully at cutting deep dish pizza.
Yeah.
Next. Another thing we love is frico. This is frico's when you melt grated cheese right on a Teflon pan. And not only is it an interesting thing to add to pizzas, it's also a great way to help a pizza that you're reheating. Next. Which is where we came up with the Pizzeria. So if you've got leftover pizza, particularly in this case, a leftover Neapolitan pizza, what do you do with it to heat it up? And a purist in Naples would say, after 90 seconds, it's gone. Don't even bother.
Yeah.
Well, what we found is if you take some extra cheese and put it in there, fold it over in half, and put it in a panini press or cook it in a pan on the stove, it's delicious. Now, is that authentic pizza? No, but it's a clever way to take a leftover pizza the next morning and make something edible out of it.
And probably the best grilled cheese sandwich you ever had.
So there was a 15th century Italian painter named Arcimboldo who would make various portraits of people out of fruit and vegetables. Now, he lived long before there was pizza, but inspired by him, this is our pizza man.
Wow.
Pizza steels are interesting. We try to give lots of recommendations for how you can cook your pizza at home to approximate what you'd get in a professional oven. A lot of people use pizza stones, but the problem with a pizza stone is that the stone absorbs heat slowly and it releases heat slowly. And it's much harder to get the proper amount of heat in. So we use a big hunk of metal. So this is a 1/4-inch piece of steel that either there's people that make them put our name on it, but you can also go, we describe in the book how you can go to a metal shop and have them cut you a piece of metal. And it really makes a difference in getting the bottom crust to cook properly. This is just some more things we're creating along with the book. Next.
Yeah.
I've got some galleries where we have a variety of the pictures in the book, including the pizza pictures. Next.
Oh, the podcast.
And the Pizza's book is out now. We've got a podcast that will be coming out. And we have turned our attention internally to pastry, which is another whole ball of wax.
Wow. So it never ends, huh?
Well, at some point I'll end. As long as I can, I'm going to keep trying to dig into food. Pizza is the first time that we did this for what's arguably a single dish.
Yeah.
In the past, modernist cuisine covered fish, meat, vegetables, almost anything. The bread book covered almost any kind of bread. Pizza is, in a sense, a narrower topic, but I think it's also a very important topic because it's the world's most popular single dish.
Yeah.
Or certainly it's the world's most popular single dish that's imported. You know, there may be a rice dish that everyone eats in China, but the food outside of China eaten most in China is likely pizza. And that's true. We checked, and there's a pizzeria in almost every country in the world. Out of like 186 countries recognized by the UN, there's a couple of them we couldn't find pizzerias in. But what we would usually do then is we would call the embassy or their embassy to the UN, and we'd say, hey, do you have a pizzeria? And then usually they'd say, oh, yeah, here's where you go.
Well, you know what I'd love to do, Nathan, is, since of course we've gone over, and thank you so much for these phenomenal slides, and sorry for keeping you so long. I couldn't help myself in jumping in and asking questions along the way because it was so much fun. But if you can join us for a few minutes in the what we call the after party, where we'll have a lot of the people who are watching will be able to actually be on, with you personally. I'd love to explore this very question of, why pizza even is the most popular, what makes it work, as the most popular food, why has the whole world embraced it, and talk about whatever you feel like talking about. So,
okay, great.
So let me say this, we're going to, I promised you all we'd spin the wheel. Well, clearly I don't have time to spin the wheel. We'll do it on Wednesday. You do not have to be present. So if you're not there Wednesday, we're going to spin the wheel. If your name comes up, I'll let you know if you won the knife. But join us Wednesday, because on Wednesday, Peter Ewan, the famous pastry chef, will be demonstrating his technique for lamination, the Ewan numbering system. It's a unique method he developed that now other pastry chefs are using in competition to make the lightest, flakiest laminated products like croissants and danishes and all sorts of cool products. That's Wednesday. And then next week, we've got Jonathan Deutsch of the Drexel Innovation Lab and Rebecca Etter of Grupo Bimbo Bread Company on a whole presentation on what to do with leftover bread. And it goes on and on. Richard Koppich will be here to do another presentation on modern adaptations of gluten-free. And we've got a few more weeks before this year's symposium wraps up, so keep coming back. Nathan, what we're going to do is you and I will log out of this webinar.
And log back into the other one.
Correct. And everybody else,
great.
Migrate over. We'll see you in just a minute. Nathan Myhrvold, thank you so much for this phenomenal presentation, and congratulations on Modernist Pizza joining the oeuvre of modernist books that are coming out that are changing the landscape of book publishing. Really, I mean, you've created your own category, so it's pretty phenomenal. We'd love to talk more about that too in the after.
Okay,
we'll see you
there. See you in a few minutes. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye. We'll see all of you in a minute. Thank you to our team behind the scenes. Our event technical and production partners, Ganoid Communications, including our producer, Gurmit Singh, and his team, Jita Gajaria, Gagandeep Singh, and Jaydev Kashari. Thanks also to Ted Nelson and Lael Fretzel of our creative and marketing team at Gumbo Marketing, and the many folks at Johnson & Wales University who supported me throughout this event. My executive assistant, Sarah Standifer, Communications Director, Melinda Law, Chancellor, Mim Rooney, Charlotte Campus President, Cheryl Richards, and our executive team leaders, deans and faculty, Maureen Dumas, Michael Schrader, Michelle Nicholas, Mark Norman, Brent Steyerwalt, Laurie Heimbach, Jerry Lanuza, Amy Felder, Harry Paymiller, Richard Miskovich, and many, many others. Thank you all.